Tonight on America's Dumbest Criminals. Wouldn't you think guys at a crack buy would exhibit better behavior than this? Well, it won't be just the police who set them straight. The store offered low prices, but these guys wanted electronics for nothing. And who's the real dummy in this picture? Hint, it's not the one being carried. Prepare to be carried away by the stunning stupidity of America's Dumbest Criminals.
Delta 1566, give me a call on your primary.
Now, welcome your hosts for ADC, Daniel Butler and Debbie Allen.
Hi there. We're so glad you're watching. Well, I see you brought along a friend today.
Yeah, but now this is no dummy, Debbie, okay? This is one tough customer. This is a police dummy who single-handedly brought thousands to justice.
Well, you might credit it to his steely gaze, but I think there's another reason for his track record.
Well, yeah, I mean, speeding motorists see him sitting in an unmanned patrol car and think he's the real deal with a radar gun aimed at him.
It causes a surprisingly quick connection between the conscience and the brakes.
Yeah, but later tonight, we'll find a police dummy personally involved in a hostage situation. But before that, we'll encounter all sorts of other dummies on the other side of the law.
First up, we've got a throng of thugs who gather to buy and sell drugs.
But there are surprises in store, and not just for those making the deals.
Tonight, we've got a family portrait caught on camera.
A couple years ago, we had a place called The Tree, and law enforcement generally calls it the Tree of Knowledge. And the reason for that is the wide variety of people we have there doing either consuming alcohol or doing the drug sales. They aren't there for legitimate reasons most of the time. And it was my job to go up there and try and catch the people that were selling drugs. And we put a couple of undercover officers in a car and a video camera and sent them through there to buy drugs. We bought drugs from quite a few different people. And one particular day, the people that owned the piece of property had told us that there were no drug sales taking place there or drug purchases. And when we sent the undercover officers through there, her grandson came out there and was fighting off the other drug dealers, and just so he could sell us the drugs. And it was a short time later we arrested him for the drug sales. And when we showed her the videotape, it wasn't long after that that the city took possession of the property, turned it into a park so we could get rid of the drug dealers.
Police officers spend the majority of their time tracking down hoodlums, but occasionally they're able to turn the tables and have the crooks come looking for them.
It's practically a self-service situation for our next hombre.
Yes, just another momentous memento of something to remember me by.
About a year or so ago, some fellow officers and I were trying to catch a parole violator, and we just missed him several times apparently at his mom's house. We had his mother's phone number, so I got a wild idea one day. Let's just call him on the phone and see if he answers or if we can talk to him. As luck would have it, he answered the phone when I called, and I asked him if he had recently lost a wallet, and he kind of was hesitant, but then he said, well, maybe. So I went ahead and told him that we had recovered a wallet during another search warrant at someone else's house, and I thought it might be his. Of course, I knew, and I'm sure he knew, he hadn't lost a wallet. And I asked him if I could meet him somewhere because I didn't want to push my luck by asking him to come to my office right here. He asked me, where are you right now? And I said, well, I'm at the sheriff's office. He said, well, I'll just meet you there. I've got to go to the store anyway. And he drove right down here, and he walked in the door, and there was about 4 or 5 officers, including myself, standing in the doorway when he walked in. And I had my handcuffs in my left hand, and I shook hands with my right hand. He introduced himself, and I cuffed him up. And he told me, he says, man, I can't believe I fell for that. He said, that's the craziest thing I ever heard.
Savvy retailers are well aware of the impact that impulse shopping can have on their sales, and that's why you find all those products at the checkout counter.
Yeah, but savvy retailers are also well aware of the impulse shopping of those who seek to avoid paying for the things they pick up.
And that's why those savvy retailers set up surveillance cameras to catch shoplifters like these guys. Take a look. We'll compress this 7-minute drama to keep up the pace, but watch how you can almost hear these shoplifters' thoughts by watching their actions. Okay, let's be nonchalant. Let's act like we're just browsing. Let's just look at things and put them back, and pick them up and put them back, and pick them up and put them in the... Oh, somebody's coming. Oops, just kidding. I wasn't doing what I was doing. You know how these things happen. You know, if we were really good shoplifters, we wouldn't stop with just this $20 Walkman. We'd sneak out with that stove at the end of the aisle. Okay, here we go. Why don't I put this item in your backpack before somebody steals it? There we go, nice and snug. You take care now. I'm gonna go scope out the big screen TVs. And with that, he was gone. But about 45 seconds later, his friend has new company. The security staff, and they want to know if they can take a peek inside that backpack. And lo and behold, look what they find. Busted. Well, that's one man who won't be walking out with a Walkman.
In Marion, Illinois, it's illegal to eat a donut and walk backwards on a city street.
The Marion Town fathers sure know how to take the fun out of life, huh? But there is nothing funny about drunk driving. If there's anything at all positive about this next guy who was charged with DUI, you'd have to say that he was careful. Well, kinda. Here's a 100-proof example of America's dumbest excuses.
Here in Carlsbad, we'd experienced some rain over a week's time, and they'd put out roadblocks with flashing lights on them, and some of the low water crossings sometimes run water, and we put those out to warn people from driving across them. And here in the desert, the rain dries up pretty quick. On patrol one night, I pulled up behind a vehicle sitting at these flashing lights and exited my car and asked them what they were doing, because the crossing was dry. There was no water running across it. And with a slurred speech, these individuals told me that they were law-abiding citizens and they were waiting for the light to change so they could proceed on. So we got them out of their car and give them a nice place to sleep for the evening and fed them real good and took them to see their favorite person, the judge, the next day.
Hey, you remember the classic story of the Wizard of Oz? The Scarecrow wanted a brain and the Tin Man wanted a heart. All right, well, you're gonna see some twisted similarities in our next story, except that it's the Tin Man who needs a brain. And instead of going to the Emerald City, well, let's follow the yellow brick road to the Blue Light Special.
We had a big operation going. This fella had committed a number of burglaries. He had kidnapped this young girl. We had probably 30 officers out, helicopter, dogs, working the trail. A resident drove up to us and said, "There's a man down on the bridge. He's apparently exposing himself." Kind of didn't think, since we were looking so hard for this other guy, that'd be the same one, so we drove down, checked him out anyway. Sure enough, there's a fella standing there with not too much on, but he looked like the Tin Man. He had been breathing in paint fumes, choice being usually silver or gold for some reason, and he was covered with silver. Paint huffing is, these folks would spray the paint into a plastic bag and huff and puff. They inhaled the paint fumes, and unfortunately for them, it makes them do really stupid things, and it also causes very significant brain damage. The officer asked him for an ID. The fellow located some pants, gave him an ID, and as the officer held on to his ID, the fellow took off running. Indeed, looked like the Tin Man running through the land of Oz without too much on. But he wasn't hard to find. He was, given the fact we had a helicopter there and bloodhounds and 40 police officers, and he was the only man running through the woods without too much clothes on, looking like the Tin Man. He was promptly arrested and jailed.
One day I got this call of a traffic altercation at a location here in town. And when I got there, this couple approached me, and they were yelling and screaming, pointing at a vehicle near them that they had followed back from downtown Chicago. And they saying, "This is our car, this is our car, that man's over there driving it." And the guy had actually stopped for them. They were flashing their headlights and everything. So he got out of the car and he was yelling and screaming. He's pretty adamant about this being his car. He had just bought it. So I asked the guy, what's the deal with this car? And he says, I just bought the car a couple days ago for $100.
I just was in need for a car, you know.
And the guy didn't have the keys to it, but what he did give me was a screwdriver so I'd be able to start the car with and drive around with it.
That's how I started. That's how we started the car.
So I checked the car out and it had a busted steering column in it. It actually turned out to be that couple's car. So the guy did end up going to jail and he's out $100.
Well, as you'll see in our next story, our crook's bread isn't done, if you know what I mean. And that results in a little role reversal. Now, unlike the thief, I don't want to give too much away. So here, take a look.
We had a man that was breaking into houses. He broke into 3 or 4 in one neighborhood, and we ended up arresting him. We went to get one of the victims to have her come over and ID him to make sure we had the right bad guy. As she was approaching the car, the bad guy blurts out,
yeah, that's the woman whose house I broke into.
That's the woman whose house I broke into.
When traveling, the crew of ADC eats at Tony Roma's. Tony Roma's, over 200 locations worldwide.
And now, for a man who thinks news briefs are something you wear, here's Daniel, ADC Headlines.
All right. A man in Athens, Alabama, was attempting to flee on foot after ditching a truck he had stolen. But blending into his suburban surroundings proved difficult because of one gigantic identifying trait. A neighbor reported that a suspicious man was running down her street with a snake around his neck. He was the only one with a snake around his neck, so in moments, he slipped from inconspicuous to incarcerated. Things weren't too kosher for another would-be robber from a Florida deli. First, the clerk walloped the crook in the face with a giant salami, breaking the bad guy's nose. Then Mr. Smashed Schnoz ran and hid in the trunk of a car. As luck would have it, the vehicle was driven by an undercover police officer, and the poor mensch was in jail. A lead-footed driver in San Diego was doing over 80 miles an hour before she was stopped by a patrolman. Now, hoping to get off, the chagrined driver explained that she was speeding because she was late for traffic school. All right, but winning no sympathy, she finally exclaimed, "Look, you don't understand, I'm the instructor." And that closes the file on ADC Headlines, news ripped from somewhere near the back of your local newspaper. Debbie?
For many, jewelry is a cherished keepsake. But for goodness sakes, what this guy will do to keep a bracelet. It certainly created a memory for our next suspect, but I doubt that it's one that he treasures.
We get a felony warrant on a domestic offender, and myself and my partner, Cannonball, we go out and try to serve this felony warrant. We make contact with the fella's wife. She says, "What do you want him for?" So we have some paperwork to have him sign, and he left a couple of bracelets with us that we'd like to get back to him. I left her a card and my pager number on it, and I said, have him page me if he wants his bracelets back. Later on in the day, he pages me, and I have my voicemail, and he says, Detective Garcia, he says, "I'd like to get my bracelets back. I'm at home right now." So myself and my partner, Cannonball, go back out to his house, and have him step outside, and I said, "You want your bracelets? Turn around, put your hands behind your back." And we put our bracelets on him. After that, he was arrested and brought to Yuma County Sheriff's Detention Center and booked.
Okay. It's bad news to find a virus in your computer, but what the technicians found in this printer is a bigger fly in the ointment than any bug infesting the Silicon Valley.
I was working one evening and requested to come into one of our local retail outlets in Syracuse. And as I made contact with the computer technician, he said he had been working on a computer printer and had some questions for me. He produced a little baggie with some green leafy substance and says, "Ever seen this before?" And I said, "Quite frequently. It looks like marijuana to me." And then he proceeded to tell me that an individual had brought a printer into the store to be repaired. He told the guy that the printer would no longer feed paper. Canon had told him to shake the printer upside down before, make sure there was nothing in obstruction. He told the technician at the store that he had done what Canon had told him on the phone, and there was nothing that he could see in there. The technician said, well, he felt he could fix it. Took it back into the shop, opened it up, and in the printer wheels, he finds all kinds of green leafy substance. jamming up the wheels and causing it not to be able to feed the paper properly. I said when the guy comes in to pick up the printer to please call me. About 2 days later, he showed back up to pick up his printer. They paged me, I came in, and at which time he was detained and arrested for possession of the marijuana. Initially, he was very shocked, so he had no idea how marijuana could get in his printer, and I asked him if the printer was his. He said, yeah, it's my printer. I said, does anybody else use your printer? He says, no, I'm the only one that uses it. After I had arrested him for the possession of the marijuana, I asked him jokingly, I said, what were you trying to do, roll a marijuana joint in your printer? He didn't think that was very funny. He didn't want it.
Now, let's look back at one of ADC's greatest hits from the year 1997.
And now, actual surveillance cam footage of an officer who has his cover blown but still manages to do the deal. The first thing this dealer says to our undercover officer is that he saw him at the police station, but he continues to do the deal.
So you're not in the county, man. What are you talking about? You? What you want? Nothing from you, man. No, I was checking out. What you want? You got 20 cents ready? Yeah. Can I see it? Yeah, you the law? No, I'm not the law. All right, come on.
This guy knows he's a cop, but he still does the deal.
Can I see it? Can I look at it? Yeah, make it the money. Well, let me see how the dough first. There you go. I want you to pull off. You the police? Hell no, are you? Dude, what you smoke off of? That ain't none of your business. I feel you the law.
He believed right, and he got busted.
In Wilbur, Washington, it's illegal to ride an ugly horse.
Can you believe this guy got arrested? When he got into the jail, city officer opened up his door. The guy just took off running and falls 20 feet down into our basement ramp gate on the secured side. So he was trying to escape from jail and ended up in jail. Not only did he land back in jail, but he broke both of his wrist and his leg.
Before you jump, know where you're jumping to. Well, some people just seem irresistibly drawn to things they should avoid, like a moth to flame.
Or a bug to a windshield.
Yeah, well, this story forces you to ask the question, who is the real dummy?
It's tonight's mind-numbing example of, we're not making this up.
Here in Boulder City, we have a traffic enforcement dummy car that we set out in certain areas of the city to hopefully slow down traffic or detour speeders. I received a dispatch that there was a couple of subjects out towards the new light at Adams Extension. They were messing with our mannequin dummy car that we have out there. So I responded out there, and upon arrival, I found a white pickup truck, four-wheel drive Chevy pickup truck, stuck in the dirt median. I, asked them to step to the back of the vehicle, and I could smell that they had been drinking. They were all standing back of the vehicle by this point, and just having a good old time. And I asked them what they were doing, and they said they tried to flip a U-turn, and they got stuck in the dirt median. So I asked for another officer to come just to back me up. And, upon his arrival, he noticed in the bed of a pickup truck there the head to our dummy, Lieutenant Dan. Placed them all under arrest at this point in time. The funny part of the story is that the truck was a four-wheel drive, and they were so intoxicated that when they were stuck in the dirt median, all they would have had to do was put the truck in four-wheel drive, and they would have been able to drive out. After recovering Lieutenant Dan, myself and Officer Wilbrandt were able to perform first aid on him, and we're happy to report that he's back out on the streets of Boulder City detouring traffic speeders.
You and I don't have legs. Well, Sergeant Spanky, it's time for the three of us to head on out.
The pitiful thing is this dummy's probably got a more active social life than either one of us.
Want to dance later, dummy? Come on.
Give us a week to cheer up, and we'll be back with more far-fetched yet true stories.
If you can't wait, or you've got a lead on a story, visit our website at www.dumbcrimes.com.
We appreciate you joining us, and we want to take this opportunity to thank the officers who helped us with tonight's show.
Just like their colleagues, every day they lay their lives on the line to keep us safe from the stupidity of would-be criminals. We appreciate your good work.
As always, we hope that we've all learned from others' mistakes.
But if you haven't, we just might see you next week on America's Dumbest Criminals.
Goodbye, y'all.
What's up, baby?